Explains this time we're asking the question who it really pays to discover. You might be familiar with that from the credit card. We're going to talk about credit cards and how they work. And it's important to understand at the outset that a credit card is a company, and that means that they have a profit margin. In other words, after they do all the things that they do, they have to have money left over because they're a company, and that's the whole point of having one. So, we use credit cards when we are shopping, and so usually they allow us to borrow money from them, and then we pay it back. And oftentimes the phrase "it pays to discover" is a reference to this idea of giving cash back. In other words, you get points, bonuses, rewards. Sometimes you just get 5% back. It's almost like getting an automatic discount on an item. But is it really? The reality is that if you do that, if the company is giving away all the money that they're not making a profit margin, which means that they're a terrible business. A good charity, but a terrible business. And the reality is that Discover is not a bad business. If you look at their financials, they're doing quite well. So how is that happening? Well, the first thing that we need to understand is that credit cards are not loans. They are what are called a line of credit, which means that they are giving you access to a certain amount of money anytime between now and the future. So when they give you their fancy little piece of plastic, it has a spending limit on it, which means that they are willing to give you a loan, not really a loan. They're willing to give you money up front for you to pay it back. And oftentimes, if you pay it back within the same cycle, you don't pay interest for it. So they're kind of giving you access to money in the future up to about 30 days without you even paying interest for it. So the question is then, if you borrow more from your line of credit than you pay back, then you start getting an account balance, and they do start charging interest on that. And so that's money. Or that's money that they make if you pay it all back. And you actually end up paying interest on top of interest. And so that's one way for a credit card company to make money, is that you carry a balance, you pay interest, you make your minimum payments, which is usually just enough to pay off the interest and a little bit extra. You keep using the card, which means that after a while they're making so much money in interest that they're making money off of you. Well, in that scenario, it definitely doesn't pay to Discover, but we all understand that about Discover Card. And so most people, when they get a credit card, when they take that risk on themselves, they think to themselves, well, if I always pay it back, then I'll win because I'll get the points from the card, and I won't have to deal with this debt. And basically I'll take their profit margin away from them. The problem is that this doesn't work. In reality, you still end up paying for your own cash back. And let's look at why. The reality is that Discover Card is not actually money. The Discover Card, if I want to go to one of my favorite clothing stores, let's say Guess, to get a hip and trendy sweater, because everybody knows that the Bearded Wonder loves sweaters, and I especially like Guess's style. That store has a contract with the credit card. In other words, it is not legal tender. So cash is legal tender in the United States, meaning that you have to accept it if you're a company. You are not allowed to not accept cash. Because it is a law in our country that you have to take it for all debts or services that are rendered. If you look on money, it says that. It says this is legal tender for, and then it tells you what, which means you have to take it if somebody offers it as payment for certain things. Credit cards are not that, which means that they have contracts with stores, and either one of them can refuse to have a contract, which means that the store does not take the card. Now, the reality is that the store has to pay money to the credit card company in order for the card company to be accepted there. So when I go to Guess and I use my Discover card to buy clothing at Guess, Guess has to give a percentage of that money to Discover, which makes Discover money. So every time I use my Discover card at Harris Teeter, Guess, a gas station, it doesn't matter. Discover card makes money off of that transaction from the people that I'm buying stuff from. And then I get my cash back. So why should I care? Well, if you look at our little graphic here, we've got a problem. And the problem is that the profit margin exists for Discover Card. They gave me my cash back, but now the company is not making money, which means that they're going to close because they're not a charity. They don't exist just to give me cash back. So what happens is basically they add as one of their overhead costs, or one of their costs of doing business, what's called a merchant fee. In other words, they guess how much they're going to pay to Discover for transactions, and they add that to the price of the things that I'm buying from them. Whether I'm buying with cash or not, they just make everything 2% more expensive. They give 1% of that to Discover, and basically, because they have higher prices, that cash back that I'm getting is actually going back to the store because they're charging higher prices than they would if everybody used cash. Which means that my cash back is not actually coming to me, it's going to the store. An obvious example of this you see at some gas stations where they'll actually charge a different cash price and card price. Usually the gas stations don't do that. They just charge the same for everybody and make the merchant fees whether you're paying cash or with a card. But some of them discount the gas a little bit to the people that they don't have to pay for the credit card company, if that makes sense. And so it's a way for them to be extra competitive. Most of them don't need to do that to be competitive, and they charge it to anybody and make a little bit extra money. That's it for us today. Hope you have a good day.